the Garden and Old Show, members only. So, inside info only, no contacts involved, no problem. All right,
No
let's put this.
contacts. Yeah, no contacts.
Yeah,
No, this is all from memory. This is
sometimes no context.
sometimes no context, but always no problem. I heard Aria there a moment ago, Ryan.
Yeah, she, anytime Kristen, my wife, just left for work, and she knows that that happens. So, for about 3 minutes, she'll start whining until she gets distracted by a toy.
Little separation anxiety.
Only for a moment, though. She does pretty well. We've even both left and put a camera up and seen how long, and it's not long at all. But folks, we decided that we wanted to take some time, being that there's so much change in all the athletic programs with Leonard, with the last couple years with the baseball team, and then going all the way back to even Bobby. That it'd be a good time to talk about the longevity and really the uniqueness of Florida State's long-term coaches. And I think it is pretty rare, and we'll get into this more in depth, but it would be hard for any fan base to argue a more stable coaching, I guess, environment across all the sports than that Florida State had for a good long time. Now, we'll see how it goes in the next couple years, and I think college and athletics have changed dramatically since these coaches, the OGs were hired, as I'll refer to them. But I thought, yeah, Vince, you brought up a good point. Let's talk about how special it is.
It's really special. I feel very fortunate to have been going to Florida State at a time when, they're all pretty much in their heyday.
Yeah,
It is rare. It's super rare. I think if you look at most other schools, they could point to a singular coach maybe that was there for 7 or 8 years or 10 years.
yeah,
But it is a unique situation for Florida State because they had, their football coach for decades. They had their baseball coach for decades. They had their basketball coach for decades. They had their, women's basketball coach for. I was trying to check here to make sure I was saying this right. Yeah, so decades, right? So it's rare. It's super rare, and so it's not only like Florida State just kind of settled to have these coaches at the helm. They were all uber successful,
yeah.
all of
And
them.
to that point, I want to point out a couple factoids, specifically about Bowden, Martin, and Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
So Bowden, 2 national titles. We all know that, right? 377 wins. I think we would even want to include a few more in there. To be fair,
Yeah,
the
I was going to
NCAA
bring that up,
skull.
by the way. I was going to bring that up.
Mike Martin, 2,029 wins, most ever in college baseball history, and 17 College World Series trips. And then Hamilton, all-time leader in wins at FSU history, multiple ACC titles, and really built it from the ground up. So I think those numbers kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah, tack on a few onto that too. So you're talking about wins and that kind of stuff, and so Mike Martin, didn't he have like, I don't know, like 40 seasons in a row of 40 victories or something ridiculous, which is, the last after he retired and his son took over and we, it didn't maybe not go so well. And we kind of just like took it, we took that for granted, 40 wins. That is unheard of. And then Bowden, 14 straight top four finishes. And people always bring this up. Imagine if Bobby had been coaching in a time where there was a playoff, where
Yes.
there was, a 4-team playoff or a more. There'd be more trophies in the case. There just would be. People look back on the teams that like, that team in, was it 80, 89 maybe, or whatever, that, lost the first two games of the season. And then by the end of the season, they were, you know, for all intents and
Mhm.
purposes, they were the best team in the country. And most people would tell you that they were.
Mhm.
But in those days, you couldn't slip up at all. So there would be more trophies in the case if that
Yeah.
were the case. So,
Yeah.
um, and Leonard won ACC titles with the Noles. Okay, so maybe right now the ACC is not the greatest basketball league that it's always been. Other leagues are pumping. Other leagues have a lot more money than we do as a league, and they're throwing the money at the other sports as well, which the ACC can't do. So and that's played out. You see it this year. The SEC is probably the best basketball league
Yeah.
this season. But
And
Leonard Len, Leonard won the ACC with Florida State.
yeah. And it goes both ways. So not only did they achieve great success for their universities, but I think it's important to point out that, especially in like an era of kind of a double-edged sword, whether a coach leaves for greener pastures or it maybe a dip in performance and then they're fired by the university side, that has been around for a while. It's gotten worse in recent years, you could argue. But the fact that someone like Bowden turned down job offers at Alabama and potentially even the NFL multiple times, the fact that Mike Martin is rumored to have had multiple opportunities to leave. And same thing goes with, I'm sure Leonard Hamilton had been contacted about potential jobs. It's inevitable. But especially Bowden, I mean, of course, he was winning at the level of Nick Saban, right? And Nick Saban, I'm sure, was contacted by every program under the sun and offered crazy amounts of money. So I think it's interesting. So, two things. Those coaches decided to stay, even if there were potentially very lucrative and really good offers out there. And on the flip side, the university, even during some hard times, uh, stuck with their coach. Even Vince, this is so funny. There was so much controversy around the Bowden end, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But what people really have to understand is that, would you say, Vince, it's fair around 2004 or 5 is when the downturn really began? Like the early like 2001, 2, and 3, you still had some 10, 11 win seasons in there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so when that downturn started to happen, it was controversial for us that ended up being the whole coach in waiting, and some say Bound was gracefully offered out, essentially like, hey, why don't you step down with class and we'll respect it and we'll celebrate it. But Vince, think of that with any other school. If 2004, 5, and 6 had happened at a place like Florida State, let's say, let's use Alabama, a 6-win season, maybe a 2 6-win seasons. There is no, hey, appreciate how good you did for a bunch of years for us. Why don't we figure out an exit plan to have you retire gracefully? It's more like you're fired.
Right. Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
over. And so it goes two ways. That Bowden stuck around despite the offers, and Florida State stuck with Bowden. Some would say, people who are on the side of, hey, man, it even went too far or too long, would say that they stuck with him through tough times, hoping that he could figure it out and kind of modernize. And when he didn't, they didn't even do the cold thing of just letting him go. They still found a graceful way to kind of transition that process. So it's amazing.
That's one of the things about this university, the athletic department, the programs in general that I've always appreciated is they they're not they're not falling into the norms,
Right.
right? Florida State's always been a down home, folksy kind of thing that, you take care of your own and your own will take care of you. And yes, there's business involved. And some people, frustrated some people and probably still does to this degree. But, Bowden was a machine. His program was a machine. Part of his, or a lot to do with his success was the fact that his coaches loved to coach for him and they didn't want to leave. At the time, Florida State was paying, their coaching staff,
Hmm.
what should be paid because there wasn't this large gaps that there are now.
Hmm.
And so, that kind of allowance for blips in the radar, it was just the perfect timing for that to allow those things to happen. Bowden didn't have many blips
Yeah.
now. Um, and he wasn't doing things off the field that would cause concern, regardless of what, Sports Illustrated will write an article about, and regardless of, you know, uh, uh, music classes that people got answers to or whatever. That's all nonsense.
Compared to now, by the way, none of that stuff would have mattered.
It
You
wouldn't
got
matter.
Georgia players just getting into street races every day.
Yeah, and people dying.
Yeah.
So he he allowed he had all the other stuff buttoned up.
Hmm.
So an administration couldn't come in and say, "Yeah, you're struggling on the field. Plus, you're a little shady over here too." Right?
Yeah, like Hugh Freeze.
That kind of that doesn't happen. And let's equate that to Leonard. I don't know if you caught his post game
I
press
did. Yeah.
conference. Not right after the game when he was on the court, literally in the press conference.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched that, folks, you should go watch that. It was enlightening and it was humbling and it was just you couldn't feel anything but proud about the way the type of person he is, the
Hmm.
type of mentor he is, the type of coach he is, the type of man he is, the type of representative for the university that he is. I mean, it's I was I'm not ashamed to say there were a couple of times when he was saying things that tears it was getting a little dusty, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure.
And
He's been part of
so
everyone's lives for a long time now.
to say it's the same kind of thing, like he had some blips in the radar more so than Coach Bowden, but everything else was buttoned up, man.
Yeah.
It was buttoned up. Guys were graduating, and he had enough success,
Yeah.
to continue on, um, for the university to continue to back him.
Yeah.
And there was a long stretch, Ryan, where Florida State was the third winningest team in the league. And you're
Hmm.
like, well, why would you be so proud about being the third winningest team in the league? Folks, we're talking about the ACC, right?
90s and
And
80s.
we're
Yeah.
and we're talking about um, it, Florida State being a football school, not a basketball school, and the only teams that were achieving to a higher degree than Florida State during that time was Duke and North Carolina.
Yeah. Especially with Leonard, I think it really comes down to doing things differently than a lot of programs do, especially in a time of great change. And for a while there, the whole development factor, I guess, for the NBA would be a good way to put it, where a lot of guys were one and dones and kind of piecing out to the league. And he was able to kind of keep a core together and keep them around for a few years and be very competitive in a good league. And even going Vince to the new bloods, right? Um,
Yeah.
it, he empowered those players to own that team, to be the leaders of that team. And when you can do that, I think it's one of the best things that coaching a really good coach can do, and Bowden did it as well. Is there at some point Bowden was just sitting in a golf cart, you know, watching everything, making notes, meeting with players, having some, but he wasn't Jimbo Fisher, right? He wasn't in the weeds like Jimbo. Like a good example of that was,
Well,
but
when he was younger.
No, I'm talking about even in, let's say, 98 to 2004,
Yeah,
right? Once you've had sustained success over years and years and decades, you develop that culture of you come to Florida State, you're going to work, you're going to be part of a family, and it becomes player led teams, not coaching led teams. And I think that was what was always interesting about a lot of the coaches we've had the fortune of having here is that yeah, the coaches were awesome and they're amazing, but man, think of some of the players that came through, uh, the leaders that they were able to recruit in a time in which a lot of people were going flash and flare for recruiting. Going back to that folksy nature, Vince, a lot of our coaches were going faith and family
yeah.
as the selling message, which I always appreciated.
If you look at the crazy run, Florida State literally would go into the living room of the highest recruits that you can find, and it was literally like turnkey, right?
Yep.
Because it's Coach Bowden. There's not much more to say than
Yeah.
Coach Bowden,
He just
and
sits there with the rings and
you've got the logo, and he is a decent, well-respected guy, and he's highly successful, to the highest degree successful. And other than that, other than the fact that you can't take everybody, um, it was he was a machine. The whole thing was a machine until it wasn't, right? And that happens. Leonard Hamilton didn't have. I think if Florida State was a little more on the if if Florida State was more of a basketball school,
mm-hmm.
you know, I think Leonard could have had maybe that same kind of effect going into
I
the
agree.
living rooms.
Yeah.
But because Florida State had, some really rough patches in basketball, like Pat Kennedy was a good coach, and he had a good run with a couple seasons of some really talented guys, Doug Edwards, Ronnie Dobard, Bobby Sura, Charlie Ward, all these guys.
Yeah.
And there was like a flash in the pan there,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't sustained. Had there been some sustaining of that after that, then I think Coach Hamilton would have had an easier job of pulling in more recruits to keep that level higher. Mike Martin, kind of the same way as Bowden. The only blemish, as we all know, is that he never won the title. But I don't, the further we're removed, from Mike Martin retiring, the
Yeah.
less I feel that. I don't feel that as much. I mean, I want to win. Don't get me wrong. It's the only thing missing. There
Right.
are very few baseball programs in America that have the pedigree and the history and the tradition that Florida State has. Very few have had the success. It's that one thing that's missing. We're going to get it. I think Link
Yep.
Jarrett's going to be the guy to get us there. But he didn't. The only thing keeping Mike Martin from getting all the players he wanted was the major leagues.
Right.
That's the only thing.
Yeah. And to kind of put a pin on I guess the side of really good human being hires. Um, although Florida State's had some blips, and I know we're gonna talk about some of the new bloods on our coaching carousel, right, that are
Mm-hmm.
currently here. But I think overwhelmingly there has been a sense of good human beings, and I know Vince has some images he's going to share here of that kind of speaks to that.
Yeah, I think before we get into the talk of the new folks, I've told a lot of stories off and on over the years on the show about the blessing that I've had to be able to interact personally with these coaches. Um, Coach Bowden was obviously the first one. I had, because of being in the Chiefs, I had the opportunity to meet him on several occasions when I was a student. And then after I was out of school, see him again on the booster tour, and remarkably, he remembered me,
Mm-hmm.
much to the astonishment of my brain, because my brain doesn't work that way. But this is a great shot here, and just I'll just give the brief anecdote about this. We're at this booster thing, and we're waiting in line to go take a picture with him, and we're walking up, and I, said, "Hey, Coach, I'm Vince Ciccarelli. I was in the Marching Chiefs. You probably don't remember." And he did. He did. He remembered. He didn't remember necessarily every little detail about me. And then he saw my kids walking, and he goes, "Are these your kids?" "Yeah, these are my daughters." And Gabby ran right up to him, was my little
Mm-hmm.
one, and he put her on his lap, right? And these are the kind of connections that I think a lot of coaches, maybe they don't feel like they have time for this kind of stuff, these days. But
Yeah.
these are the kind of things that ingratiate and build unbreakable long-term bonds with your fan base. Um, and of course, Bobby was a freak when it came to knowing, who people were. Uh, he just was, he was really good at it. Where's my little slide clicker here? Nope, that's not it. Why won't it work, Ryan?
Struggling.
Oh, there it is. Okay, moving on to the next one. So Coach Martin, I had briefly talked with him, when I was a student a few times, but I never really, met, introduced face to face. This was I think this was at a skull session, the Chiefs playing in Hauser, and I was down in the dugout, and he was there, and I got to take a photo with him, and same kind of thing. He was, he's like, he's known you forever.
Right.
And those are the kind of things that, a lot of coaches these days miss. Um, we haven't really dove into Coach Sue yet, but Coach Sue, winningest all-time coach, for Florida State, 470 wins. And she took a program that, was probably average, maybe a little above average at best when she took over, 1997, and just took it to a whole nother level. And it says, I was reading some stuff here because I couldn't remember. 16 tournaments,
Nice.
getting to the Elite Eight in 2010 and 2015. She was the ACC Coach of the Year in 2001, 2005, 2009, 2015. And this picture here, we went to the banquet, the end of the year banquet for the women's team, because my younger daughter there was enamored with Brittany Brown.
Yep.
And Coach Sue, again, this is the type of thing. Like, she remembered Gabby, especially because Gabby had gone to the basketball camps.
Right.
Right. And by the way, the bow tie is top notch. And then, so this is something I'm going to make this a little smaller. We can start talking about the new bloods here.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I want to say, Vince, when it comes to the new bloods, I like to start with Mike, because although the results, obviously last year for sure, but even earlier, in his tenure, even though sometimes the results weren't there, I think universally what every Florida State fan agrees upon is the human being side. That's what makes him infinitely more likable than Jimbo, is because Jimbo, hey, we won a lot of games with him, right? But when you're not winning or not doing well, any kind of goodwill, if you're kind of an ass, tends to go out the window a lot quicker. It's that kind of society, right? So society. Yeah, we were right there.
Hey,
Mike
yeah.
Norvell,
So I want to.
even Go ahead.
I want to chime in on that real quick because that is the prime example of making deposits with someone in your
Mhm.
relationships all the time. I was on a Twitter um, post a couple days ago. Somebody had posted a picture of Jimbo, and somebody replied and said, "It's crazy to me how like Florida State fans don't like appreciate him," and I replied and I said, "Listen, it's not always about like the wins and losses. Like it's about how you treat people, and also it is no big secret that he was just collecting, and this is what I wrote, collecting gobs of money while basically being MIA for the
Yeah.
program. To him, it wasn't about I don't think, and I don't know him. It wasn't about the program.
Right.
It was about him. It was about what do I have? What don't I have? What's next for me?
Yeah.
So go on.
And
Go
the
ahead.
clearest example of that would be him flirting with LSU every year
Yeah, exactly.
and trying to. You never saw but Bowden put out, hey, this team's kind of coming calling. You guys, want to offer me more money or a new facility. So what I like about Mike is he's very upfront. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. Now, this can be a good thing or a bad thing for a coach. When it's going good, wearing it on your sleeves is awesome because you feel it. He got a lot of crap um, 2 years ago when we won against 3 years ago when we won against LSU in New Orleans. How he kind of celebrated, that block kick.
Hmm.
But I didn't feel that way because what that was to me was real. Like if me and you, Vince, were on the sideline as Florida State's coach and we were about to piss away an easy win,
And we
right?
were pissing it away.
And it looked like we were like, oh, this is gonna screw, like we're gonna get effed, right? And it ended that way. Me and you both would probably jump on someone else's back in relief and happiness that it did
You
not end
would
that
have.
way. Yeah,
You would
and
have, but you were in the LSU section.
yes, and that kind of emotion is fun to me. It's not something everyone was giving him crap. Now I get the whole idea, like, hey, act like you've been there, but he hadn't.
No,
So um, when it's going good, you feel that emotion, you love it. But I will caution that same thing can, and he admitted it so in this offseason, that there was times last year his body language on the sidelines was terrible. Looking up at the sky, deep sighs, almost like staring off
yeah,
into space. But what I like about Mike is unlike Jimbo, who I think you would agree, Jimbo, happy, mad, or whatever, could literally spit out a pre-canned thing that he wanted to get across, and that's what he was going to talk about. No one was going to change his emotions or trigger. He's just being himself. It's all about him. It's about his show. Mike is truly on the highest of highs or lowest of lows when he talks to you, and it shows. And what that tells me is he actually cares about the kids and the results and seeing these guys perform. And I feel like when we were really struggling last year, a lot of his emotions were really disappointment in himself for how did I let this
absolutely. Yeah,
happen? And so I
absolutely.
like that about Mike.
I do too, and I think I don't want to indicate that Jimbo like didn't care about the players. I think he does and did and still does. And but there's a different it's like it's like the trifecta, right?
Hmm.
You have to care about, yourself and what's going on with you and making sure your career is doing what needs to get done and all that. It's one point of the triangle. You need to care about the people that you're leading, right? Not just because what they can do for you, but because how what they can do, like how they can grow, how they can be successful. That's the
Hmm.
second point of the triangle. But what I don't think Jimbo ever cared about and still doesn't is the third part of it, which is us,
Hmm.
which is the fan base, which is the media, which is like without that, he Jimbo would probably be okay with playing in an empty stadium, right? Provided the money was still there. But he never ingratiated himself to the general fandom.
Yeah.
I think Mike has all three of those things. He just needs to, and he's young. He needs to be able to control and temper it. It's kind of like the audio settings. It's
Yeah.
compression, right? We need to bring the lows up a little, the highs down a little bit, and I think he will get to do that as he kind of maybe morphs into a more CEO role to a degree.
Sure.
Um, and we've said this, you've said this, I've said this. I want him to be the guy. Like, I like him. He's
Hmm.
wicked smart. He's passionate. And I want it to work out for him
Yeah.
because I think he's a long-term kind of guy.
Yeah, and I think to kind of finish up for Mike's end is that unlike Jimbo, who when people were calling for his job or whatever, because people did want him to get rid of him well before he left on his, fired or left on his own, or however you want to phrase it. It's just that the goodwill had run out very quick. Now, Mike's goodwill from a performance on the field standpoint ran out very quick because 2 wins is unheard of at Florida State. However, I think everyone would agree if you would tell him, hey, what if he had a pretty good season coming up? Would you want him? With Jimbo, a lot of people said, no, I'm kind of tired of the shtick. I'm tired of.
Yeah.
With most people would say, no, Mike, I like Mike. It better be good because I want him to stick
Yeah.
around if he's going to win. And I think that's the overwhelming majority of fans say, well, yeah, of course, if we got better, I like Mike. People would not have said that about Jimbo.
No. Jimbo throws out a 2-win season, and there are Jimbo stands out there that'll say Jimbo would never have a 2-win season.
Yeah.
Well, Texas A&M wasn't too happy with him. Thank you, Texas A&M, by the way, for buying the contract out. So yeah, you're right. You can withstand some headwinds if you treat people well
Mm-hmm.
and you're genuine and you have a love for the program, right? It's not just about you. So um, let's go to Penske next because I think we didn't really talk too much about the soccer thing. So Krikorian was a juggernaut, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and built a juggernaut, and for whatever reason, some personality conflicts between him and the administration. I don't know. We don't have the inside information around
That's
it.
an odd one. Like we don't know. That's odd.
Yeah, it's odd, but look at this. Like you take someone who's like really going to hard to replace this guy who basically built the program into like a national championship program, like top 3 in the country every year.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you going to replace? Well, Michael Offer just goes out and gets a guy that just basically keeps on humming. And from what I've heard, and I'm not the biggest soccer guru, but I follow the team, is that there are no chinks in that armor.
Yeah.
He's good with the players. He's good with the fan base. He's good with the success.
Yeah.
Lonnie, we haven't really talked about the
Lonnie Pryor.
softball thing.
Yeah.
Lonnie is
Sweet Lonnie.
sweet Lonnie. She, hey man, domination.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for Oklahoma being on an unprecedented situation,
just bad timing, man.
it's they'd have more titles, and that's why I mean in this era, you cannot always think about, well, unless you're wearing the ring, it's all for naught. There's a whole lot of winning going on the softball diamond.
Oh yeah.
And she owns that, and so she's everybody perfectly confident in her. I think she's probably, if not the highest paid softball coach, she's definitely in the top three, and
Yeah.
she should be. And it's another reason, Ryan, why we have to get to a league that pays us more money, so we can avoid people getting
Poached.
poached from us.
Yeah. Vince, I'm going to let you hit off on the baseball side because on the Garden Old Show, I just want to ensure people who, if anyone watches this tonight, we're going to cover the loss this week to Florida in more detail on the Garden Old Show. But Vince, despite that, let's talk baseball. And I know this is a real point of love for you.
It is. It's not. I mean, I was a baseball guy way before I was a
Mm-hmm.
football guy, and that happens to a lot. I think of people because little league and all that kind of stuff, and you're playing little league a lot of times before you're playing football
Yep.
because your parents are worried about you getting hurt.
Exactly.
Um, but um, how do you replace the greatest college baseball coach of all time?
Yeah. I mean,
How
especially
how
with
do
how
you do it?
beloved.
How do you do it? You know, Mike Martin Jr. I believe, earned the opportunity to give it a go. He was with the program
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. He's got the credentials, and but it didn't work out. Um, so the
I still
next
think it
thing
was the right
then,
thing to do for the university to give him a try.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying is I don't cry nepotism on that.
No,
It's
no,
not like
no.
it's not like he
Like he
just
wasn't
came in
coaching
out of
college
nowhere.
baseball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just didn't work. So, Link Jarrett, you know, highly successful everywhere he's been. He's a Knoll, by the way, and that's not a prerequisite in my
Yep.
opinion. But, if you can marry those two where, you've got a Knoll that's like a legend and they're highly successful and he and I'm of the belief with the type of mind he has and the type of attention to detail he has and the way he organizes the program and the way he thinks about things, I believe college baseball, we're going to be seeing a title with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. Last night they didn't play well and they lost, and that happens in baseball. Baseball is not football.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not,
It was
of
just a
all
midweek
these,
game, Vince.
exactly, of all these people here, Link is high up in my like confidence level of being able to be long term.
Can I just be honest with you, Vince? Bottom right corner. If you turn to that exact angle, you could pull off this exact picture. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. You just need the jacket with the pop collar.
Okay, so that's what I'll do. For one of the games this season, this fall, I will dress as Link Jarrett and see how many people can make the difference. I don't think I look much like him, but maybe.
No. No. You've he has this odd, almost like I have to poop face all the
Thanks,
time.
Ryan. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Brooke Wyckoff. So I have another photo here. Let me see. Let me see if I've got it. I do. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. This is my younger daughter, Gabby, at the basketball camp many years ago. And Brooke obviously was an assistant coach at the time. So we got a nice picture of Brooke here too. But, Brooke, I think she's still learning the coaching side of things, like the head coaching side of
Yep.
things. Um, and I think she surrounds herself with the right assistants. I think they can be a top 20 team every year.
Yeah.
I don't know that Florida State is going to win a college basketball title in men's or women's.
Yeah.
At least until we get out of this league and we have more money to play with.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But yeah, but Brooke, I love Brooke, and I'm very happy with the way the team's going. I think they've maybe be a little step back from
There
Coach
has to
Sue,
be. There has to be. I mean, think about it. It's
but not much. But not
yeah.
much.
But I'm just talking in like big picture. If you're going from Coach Sue,
Yeah,
and you're dropping off a little bit, you're still doing pretty good. I mean, to the highest of highs,
yeah. So and she's a Knoll, right? She's a
Yeah.
she's a Hall of Famer Knoll. So she has a love for the program. Link has a love for the program, a love, like a deep, deep love for the
Yeah.
program. So it's not going to be for lack of effort from any of these people. Lack of resources, that's what we need to solve. That's what we need to
Yeah.
solve. And
We got to
that
get out
takes
of
us
this
to Luke then.
conference.
That takes us to Luke. Why don't you start off with Luke?
So we both, I think we both, I predicted it. And I think you said, yeah, that it sounds likely. I think a month ago we were like, it's probably going to be Luke. Credentials wise, it made sense. I think the biggest concern with Luke is just, he's in the NBA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the salary and I'm not going to say that it's a step down because a head coaching job usually is not. But if you've worked your way in the ranks to get up in the professional ranks, right? It's not an easy thing to do. And for him to say, I'm gonna leave a good situation, even if it's alma mater, to come to it, I wouldn't say an undesirable basketball location. That's not what I'm saying here. But I don't think Florida State as currently constructed, money wise and infrastructure wise, is in the pursuit of national titles in college basketball. To say, you know what, I'm going to go follow up one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. I give him a lot of credit, and I give the university a lot of credit because they had to extend a very serious offer to secure his services. It's not like chump change. It wasn't like we got we got him on the cheap because he's a home hire or anything like, you know what I mean? So my biggest takeaway was good on the university for dedicating the resources to a head coaching search to get a coach that they wanted, and good on Luke for actually saying and having the courage. And I do think it takes courage to follow up a legend and come be Florida State's next head coach. So that being said, I think it's a match made in heaven. I think he's a good coach. I think we will see a modernization of the basketball program top to bottom. It's not like he's an old man, right? Still very youthful. I like Vince. I've always been a fan of this. Some teams go, hey, I'm going to go get the head coach that has 20 years experience in his 60s and proven winner. I've always been a fan of like, let's go get the 35 to 45-year-old coach.
Yeah.
Because generally they know the modern game and like
Yeah.
what players want and what it takes to be successful in modern basketball or any sport for that matter. So I think it's a good fit just because he's going to modernize the program, and I think we needed that.
Yeah, there is a lot pointing in the right direction here with him, and
what do you think of his press conference?
I thought it was awesome. I think he's got it. I think he's got the 3 points of the triangle.
Yeah,
and I think he obviously has a love for the university, for the program, and he also understands, and I think you have to, coming into the gig, is that we're in a transition time here.
Yeah.
With going from the crumbs of the ACC to a better place within the next you and I think within the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so his job is to make sure he's ready for that influx of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that those conversations kind of went like that. Like, Luke, we don't have all the resources to give you just yet. But here's what we can do. And Luke's response is, well, I'm going to do the very best we can do with the resources that I have.
Yeah.
So much so that when that foundation is laid, when the turbo kicks in, we're going to be ready to handle that. And we are going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that's kind of the way he has to look at this. And you cannot pass up the opportunity. Like, he couldn't pass this up. Like,
No.
how often are you going to get the opportunity to coach at your alma mater? Right.
Yeah. And I think,
and
Vince, to your point, he was in the Leonard system.
yes.
And he saw that Leonard was able to do more with less resources,
Yes.
and that it can work and you can win big. And so he's saying, okay, maybe not. The most fair point I can say, Vince, about Florida State basketball is you can win big at Florida State basketball as currently constructed, but not sustained.
You can
have moments.
Right. You can have moments right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I totally get that. I agree with you. And that's kind of the way Florida State has always been.
Even in football, really, aside from Bowden's 14 years, even ever since Bowden, that's how we've been. It's been like feast or famine, man. We've been on the top of the mountain or in the side of the mountain.
So exactly.
Yeah.
So I have good faith in him. I'm interested to see how the recruiting works. He's got a lot of connections, man. He's got a lot of connections, and I think that's going to serve him well. As far as like scouting and the NBA and all this other stuff, I think for people that are worried about, he's never been a head coach before, but he's been in this pro mentality, which is what things are starting to become.
Yeah.
And he knows the game, right? He's a scrapper, and we'll see what happens. And I do think that it was a good hire. It's probably the right hire. I don't think that I would have picked anyone else besides him of the people that were actually legitimately available.
Yeah.
And there's more than these coaches, by the way. The track coach, the golf coach, people that wear the garnet and gold.
Yeah.
We are blessed. It's not just a one-trick pony around here. Mm-hmm. Like, top to bottom, beach volleyball, swimming and diving, track and field. It's like constant success everywhere you go. Marching Chiefs included, right? It's the whole gambit. And I don't call that a sport. Some people do, believe it or not. But they're part and parcel to the athletic experience because they're everywhere. The Chiefs are everywhere.
It's competitive.
It can be. Not the Chiefs aren't competitive
with themselves. They have to output. They're competing against themselves for their best. Yeah,
absolutely, to be the best that they can be. Right.
It's like I play in a professional sport. It's called EA Sports College Football.
Right. 1% better every day. Right.
Every game. Yeah, I played just yesterday.
So this graphic, by the way, this TNG is probably lost on some people. I know it's not lost on you, Ryan, but that is a Star Trek reference to the next generation. That's what that means. So add a couple more coaches onto this graphic. I couldn't fit everybody on here, but I believe we're in good hands. So, Ryan, let's just, go back to the graphic that I made for the thumbnail. I believe, and I'm biased, Florida State is legendary Coach U.
Yeah.
You're talking about across multiple sports.
Yeah.
Very few, if any, schools can hold a candle to what Florida State has done across multiple sports, men's and women's, through the modern era of college sports. Mm-hmm. Florida State owns that. Legendary Coach U.
Owns that ass. Vince, I will say this. The thing I like most about this conversation It's just thinking of all the fun that we've had and the pleasure we've had of watching all the coaches that have come in the past and that will come in the future. Because one thing I know about Florida State, I brought it up. History would tell us uh, it does tend to be a feast or famine sometimes, but at least we can say, and a lot of people can't, a lot of fan bases can't, Vince, that we've been to the top in multiple sports.
Correct.
And most teams, most colleges, it's like, hey, we have a football team. Who cares about
Right.
anything else?
Right. Right. Right.
So it's interesting that Florida State has. It feels like lucked out on some really big hires at the same time or similar timelines, but I think it just speaks to the belief system of the university as a whole
Yeah.
to truly be unconquered.
Truly unconquered. I thought you were going to say the thing that you liked best about this show was that it was almost over.
No, no. My cat, on the other hand, has literally been pawing at my hand for like 6 minutes. And cats like to dig their paws into your hand when they're pawing at you.
Um, so I think that's a good place to wrap up, Ryan. This members only show. Thank you to our members. We don't do any ads on this show. It's it
Not
literally
yet.
right. Just for the members, we'll make this show available about a week later for everybody. But we appreciate the memberships and just supporting the show in general. So keep watching.
Keep watching. And by the way, Garden Old Show every Thursday, 7 o'clock. It's a pleasure to get to serve each and every one of you with content every single week. And I can tell you, Vince and I appreciate it. We really do. So be
Indeed.
well, everyone. Still screw ESPN. I might instead of screw ESPN, I think I might start saying screw the ACC eternally.
Yeah,
And
I'm good with
go
that.
Knowles.
Go Knowles.